The thunder rumbled like an angry god over the vast plains of Wyoming Territory, 1868, as rain poured mercilessly from the dark sky. Wade Garrison pulled his sodden hat lower, squinting through the downpour when he spotted her, a woman in a torn dress, her shoulders shaking with sobs beside an overturned wagon. Her possessions lay scattered in the mud, ruined by the relentless storm. Something about her vulnerability amid the savage wilderness stirred something in his weather-beaten heart. "Madam," he called out, dismounting from his dappled gray horse, "you shouldn't be out here alone." The woman looked up, revealing a face streaked with rain and tears, her auburn hair plastered against pale cheeks. Her eyes, green as summer grass, widened with fear at the sight of him. "Stay back," she warned, her voice quavering as she backed away, nearly slipping in the mud. Wade raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. "Name's Wade Garrison, I'm just passing through. Whatever trouble you're in, it can't be solved standing out here in this deluge." He gestured toward the dark horizon. "Night's coming. Let me take you somewhere warm." She hesitated, glancing at her ruined wagon and the two dead horses lying in their traces, victims of what appeared to be a lightning strike. "I have nowhere to go," she admitted, her voice barely audible over the rain. "There's a trading post about 5 miles west. Not fancy, but it's dry." He extended his hand. "What's your name?" After a long moment she answered, Nora Holloway." "Well, Miss Holloway, my offer stands. You can trust me or take your chances with the storm and whatever else might find you out here after dark." Nora looked at the hand he offered, calloused and strong, then back at the wreckage of her hopes. With resignation in her eyes, she placed her trembling fingers in his palm. "I don't have much choice, do I, Mr. Garrison?" Wade helped her onto his horse, feeling her shivering against his back as they rode westward. "Everyone's got choices," he said over his shoulder, "even when it doesn't seem like it." The trading post appeared through the curtain of rain, a low, squat building with light seeping through its windows. Wade tied his horse under the overhang and ushered Nora inside. The warmth hit them immediately, along with the smell of coffee, tobacco, and wet wool. A few travelers huddled around the pot-bellied stove, and a grizzled man behind the counter looked up at their entrance. "Didn't expect to see nobody else tonight," the proprietor said, eyeing them suspiciously. "Got caught in the storm," Wade explained. "Lady lost her wagon about 5 miles east. Lightning spooked her horses, overturned everything." The old man's face softened slightly as he looked at Nora's bedraggled appearance. "Got one room left, cost you $2. Wade placed the coins on the counter. "Got any hot food?" "Stews on the stove. 50 cents a bowl." Wade paid for 2 portions and the man ladled out generous helpings. He guided Nora to a small table away from the other patrons. "Eat," he encouraged. "Food always helps clear the mind." Nora looked at the steaming bowl, then at Wade. "Why are you helping me?" Wade shrugged. "Man doesn't need a reason to help someone in trouble." "In my experience, men always have reasons," she replied, caution evident in her tone. Wade sipped his coffee. "Fair enough. I've been on my own since the war ended, seen enough people left to die, doesn't sit right with me is all." Nora studied him, his weathered face, the faded blue shirt patched in several places, the revolver holstered at his side. Something about his straightforward manner made her relax slightly. "I was heading to Oregon," she said finally. "My uncle has a homestead there." Wade nodded. "Long journey for a woman alone." "I wasn't alone when I started," she said, her voice hollow. "My husband died 3 weeks ago. Fever took him fast." "I'm sorry for your loss," Wade said softly. Nora's laugh was bitter. You didn't know him. Martin was a dreamer. Convinced me to sell everything we had in Pennsylvania to start fresh out west. Now he's buried somewhere in Nebraska and I'm here with nothing." "Not nothing," Wade corrected. "You're alive. That counts for something in these parts." After they finished eating, the proprietor's wife, a kindly woman with silver-streaked hair, found Nora a nightgown and robe. "They belonged to my daughter before she married," she explained. "You look about her size." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a chair beside a washstand. Nora stood awkwardly in the doorway as Wade brought in her salvaged belongings, a carpet bag and a small wooden box. "I'll sleep in the stable with my horse," he said, turning to leave. "Mr. Garrison," she called after him. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." Wade touched the brim of his hat. "Get some rest, Miss Holloway. We can figure out your next steps in the morning." Dawn broke clear and crisp, the storm having blown eastward during the night. Nora awoke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was until the events of the previous day came rushing back. Her husband's death, the lonely journey, the lightning strike, the cowboy in the rain. She dressed quickly in her still damp clothes and made her way downstairs. Wade sat at a table nursing a cup of coffee. He stood when he saw her. "Morning," he said. "Feeling better, as well as can be expected," she replied. "Have you been waiting long?" "Not particularly. Got you some breakfast." He gestured to a plate of biscuits and bacon. As they ate, Wade laid out her options. "The stage comes through tomorrow. Could take you to Cheyenne, then catch the Union Pacific West." Nora shook her head. "I can't afford the fare. What little money we had was in a strongbox on the wagon." Her voice caught. "Even if it survived the lightning, I couldn't find it in the dark and rain." Wade considered this. "I could ride back and look for it." "You've already done more than enough," she protested. "I couldn't ask that of you." "You didn't ask, I offered." He rose from the table. "Stay here. I'll be back before midday." True to his word, Wade returned a few hours later, his clothes mud-splattered but triumphant. He placed a metal box on the table in front of her. Found it about 20 yards from the wagon, must have been thrown clear when it overturned. Nora's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside lay $47, all that remained of her former life, along with her marriage certificate, and a locket containing a lock of her mother's hair. "Mr. Garrison, I don't know how to thank you." Wade shook his head. "No need for that." He hesitated. "I've been thinking about your situation. I'm heading to Idaho Territory myself, planning to try my hand at ranching. If you'd like, I could escort you to your uncle's place in Oregon. It's not far out of my way." Nora looked at him suspiciously. "That's very generous." "What would you want in return?" "Just company on the trail," Wade said simply. "Been riding alone too long. Makes a man forget how to talk proper." Despite her misgivings, Nora agreed. The alternative, traveling alone again through dangerous territory, was far worse. The next morning, Wade purchased supplies for their journey, along with a sturdy pony for Nora to ride. They set out westward, following the trail that would eventually connect with the Oregon Trail. The days fell into a rhythm, riding from dawn until late afternoon, making camp, sharing simple meals, and talking by the firelight. Wade proved to be a skilled woodsman and a respectful companion, always careful to give Nora her privacy. On their third night, as they sat beside the campfire, Nora finally asked the question that had been nagging at her. "You mentioned the war. Which side?" Wade poked at the fire. "Union, 4th Michigan Cavalry. You were there a long time, nearly 4 years. Started as a boy of 18, came home a man of 22 with pieces missing inside." He stared into the flames. "Not all wounds leave scars you can see." "My brother fought for the Union as well," Nora said softly. "He never came home." Wade nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Many didn't." "Is that why you came west? To forget?" "Partly," Wade admitted. "But also to find something worth remembering. The war showed me how short life can be. Didn't want to waste mine doing something that didn't matter. And ranching matters, building something with your own hands. Making something grow where nothing was before." "Yes, madam, I believe that matters." As the days passed, Nora began to see beyond Wade's rough exterior. He was unfailingly kind to her, patient when she struggled with the rigors of the trail, and quick to share stories that made her laugh despite herself. In turn, she told him about her life in Pennsylvania, her dreams of teaching school, her brief marriage to Martin. "He wasn't a bad man," she explained one evening as they crossed into Idaho Territory. "Just impractical, always chasing the next opportunity without thinking things through." "And what about you?" Wade asked. "What were you chasing?" Nora considered this. "Security, I suppose." "A home that couldn't be taken away. Children someday." She smiled ruefully. Simple dreams, but they seem further away now than ever. The weather held fair as they traveled deeper into the Western Territories. They passed through small settlements and mining camps, occasionally stopping to resupply or spend a night in a proper bed at a way station. In these places, Nora noticed how Wade was always alert, his eyes scanning for trouble. Once, in a rough mining town, he insisted she wait with the horses while he arranged for rooms, sparing her the coarse atmosphere of the saloon that doubled as the only lodging. In the middle of Idaho Territory, disaster struck. They were crossing a shallow river when Nora's pony stumbled on a slick rock, throwing her into the rushing water. Wade was off his horse instantly, plunging into the current to grab her before she was swept downstream. They emerged on the bank, soaked and shaken but alive. As they made camp that evening, Nora developed a cough. By morning, she was burning with fever. "We need to find you proper shelter," Wade said, his voice tight with concern. "There's a settlement about a day's ride from here." He fashioned a travois to pull behind his horse and placed Nora on it, wrapped in every blanket they had. The journey was agonizing, with each bump sending spasms of pain through her chest. Through her fever haze, Nora was aware of Wade's constant attention, stopping to give her water, adjusting the blankets, speaking reassurances in his low, steady voice. The settlement turned out to be little more than a cluster of buildings, but it had a doctor, an elderly man who had served as a surgeon during the war. He diagnosed Nora with pneumonia and prescribed bed rest and medicines that quickly depleted her meager savings. For 2 weeks, Wade remained by her side, paying for her room at the boarding house, ensuring she took her medicine, reading to her from doggerred books borrowed from the doctor. When her fever finally broke, Nora found herself facing a new reality. "I can't afford to continue," she admitted as they sat on the porch of the boarding house. "The doctor bills took most of my money. I'll have to find work here until I can save enough to move on." Wade was silent for a long moment. "Or you could come with me." Nora looked at him, confused. "To your ranch, as what?" "As my wife," he said simply. Nora stared at him, speechless. "I know it's sudden," Wade continued, "and I'm not offering out of pity. These past weeks, watching over you, I realized something I think I've known since I found you in that storm." He met her eyes. "I care for you, Nora, more than I thought possible. Wade, you hardly know me. I know enough. I know you're brave and resilient. I know you make me laugh when I'd forgotten how. I know that when I think about building a life somewhere, I can't imagine it without you in it." Nora felt tears welling in her eyes. "I'm still mourning Martin. I understand that, and I'm not asking you to forget him." Wade took her hand gently. "I'm asking you to consider a future with me. We could build something good together, something that lasts. As a business arrangement." She asked, needing to understand his intentions. Wade shook his head. "As a partnership. I won't pretend there's not more than practical considerations in my heart, but I'll respect whatever boundaries you set. If you need time, I'll wait." Nora looked at their joined hands, her pale fingers engulfed in his sun-browned ones. "I need to think about this." "Of course," Wade said, standing. "Take all the time you need." That night, Nora barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities. Marriage to Wade would offer security and protection in a harsh land. But could she commit herself to another man so soon after losing her husband? And yet, she couldn't deny the growing fondness she felt for this quiet, honorable cowboy who had saved her life more than once. In the morning, she found Wade checking on their horses. "I've been thinking about your proposal," she said without preamble. Wade straightened, waiting. "I can't promise to love you as a wife should, not yet, but I respect you and I'm grateful for everything you've done. If that's enough for now, then yes, I'll marry you and help build your ranch." A slow smile spread across Wade's face, transforming his weathered features. "It's more than enough, Nora. We'll build the rest together day by day." They were married that afternoon by the local justice of the peace, with the doctor and the boarding house owner as witnesses. It was a brief, practical ceremony, nothing like the church wedding Nora had once dreamed of. Yet when Wade gently kissed her to seal their vows, she felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. They resumed their journey the following day, heading north toward the parcel of land Wade had purchased sight unseen from a returning settler. Nora was struck by Wade's transformation. He spoke more freely now, sharing his hopes for their future ranch, asking her opinion on decisions that would affect them both. "I thought to build the house here," he said when they finally reached their destination a week later, gesturing to a flat area near a stream sheltered by cottonwoods. "Good water, protected from the wind. What do you think?" Nora surveyed the land, wild and untamed, but beautiful in its own way, with mountains visible in the distance and rolling grassland stretching toward the horizon. "It's perfect." Their first months together were consumed with the labor of establishing their homestead. They lived in a canvas tent while Wade constructed a small but sturdy cabin. Nora learned to hunt and trap, to preserve food for the coming winter, to mend harnesses and chop firewood. It was harder work than anything she'd done before, but there was satisfaction in seeing the tangible results of their efforts. At night, they slept side by side in their narrow bed, not as lovers but as companions, Wade careful never to press for more than she was ready to give. Sometimes, in the darkness, Nora would feel him watching her, his breathing changing when she moved closer for warmth. On those nights, she felt both guilt and a growing curiosity about what it might be like to truly be his wife. As summer turned to fall, their cabin was completed, snug and weather-tight against the coming winter. They celebrated with a special dinner, using precious sugar to make a simple cake. "To our home," Wade said, raising his tin cup of coffee. "Our home," Nora echoed, suddenly overwhelmed by the realization that this place, this life, was now hers. Wade reached across the table to take her hand. "Are you happy here, Nora?" She considered the question seriously. "I'm content. It's not the life I imagined, but there's peace in it." "And purpose? And us?" he asked, his voice hesitant. "Are you content with us?" Nora really looked at him, seeing the vulnerability beneath his strength, the hope behind his patient demeanor. In that moment, she recognized something had changed in her heart. The gratitude and respect she'd felt had deepened into something more. "I'm more than content with us," she admitted softly. "I'm beginning to think I might be falling in love with you, Wade Garrison." The joy that blazed across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Nora," he breathed, coming around the table to kneel beside her chair. "I've loved you since that night in the rain. I just didn't want to burden you with it until you were ready." That night, Nora welcomed Wade into her arms as her husband in truth. Their coming together was tender and unhurried, a mutual discovery that left her wondering why she had waited so long. Winter descended with savage fury, trapping them in their cabin for days at a time. They passed the hours reading from Wade's small collection of books, playing checkers with a set he carved from wood, and planning the spring planting. Nora taught Wade to read better, correcting his rough frontier education, while he showed her how to play the harmonica he'd carried through the war. One blizzard night, as wind howled around their snug cabin, Nora shared her deepest fear. "What if I can't give you children?" Wade pulled her closer under their quilts. "Then it'll just be us building our life together. You wouldn't be disappointed." "Nora, when I found you that day, I was a man with nothing but a horse and a dream. Now I have a home and a wife I adore. How could I be disappointed?" Spring arrived with a riot of wildflowers and new possibilities. They acquired cattle and chickens, planted a vegetable garden, and built a proper barn. Wade taught Nora to ride properly, laughing as she mastered the skills that would make her a true rancher's wife. In late summer, a year after they'd arrived, the first neighbors appeared, a family with 3 young children, settling 2 miles to the west. Nora was overjoyed to have another woman to talk with, while Wade appreciated having extra hands during the autumn roundup. As their second winter approached, Nora made an announcement over breakfast. "I think we should add another room to the cabin." Wade looked up from his coffee. "Planning to take in boarders?" Nora smiled, her hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "Not exactly. But in about 7 months, there will be 3 of us living here." The plate Wade had been holding clattered to the table. "Are you saying—" "We're going to have a baby," Nora confirmed, laughing at his thunderstruck expression. Wade was on his feet instantly, sweeping her into his arms, spinning her around the cabin until they were both dizzy and breathless. "A baby," he kept repeating as if he couldn't believe it. "Our baby." The following spring, as new calves dotted their growing herd, Nora gave birth to a daughter they named Emma. Wade proved to be a devoted father, singing the little girl to sleep with lullabies his own mother had sung to him, handling midnight feedings so Nora could rest, carrying the baby in a sling across his chest as he worked around the ranch. Their homestead prospered as the years passed. They added more rooms to the cabin as their family grew. A son, William, arrived 2 years after Emma, followed by another daughter, Sarah. Wade's careful management and Nora's practical sense helped them weather drought years and falling cattle prices. They built a reputation for fairness and hospitality, their home becoming a gathering place for the scattered community that gradually formed around them. On the 10th anniversary of their marriage, Wade surprised Nora with a gift: a small schoolhouse built on the edge of their property. "You always wanted to be a teacher," he reminded her as she stood speechless before the simple structure. "The neighbors' children need learning, and ours will too before long. Seems to me you should have your chance to teach." Tears filled Nora's eyes as she embraced him. "You remembered." "I remember everything you ever told me," Wade said, holding her close. "Especially that day in the rain when you trusted me enough to take my hand." That evening, after the children were asleep, they sat on the porch of their now substantial house, watching the sunset paint the western sky in gold and crimson. Wade's hair was threaded with silver now, his face more deeply lined, but his eyes still held the same steadfast warmth that had been her anchor through the years. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, leaning against his shoulder. "Stopping for a stranger in a thunderstorm?" Wade chuckled, the sound rumbling beneath her ear. "Only every rainy day for the last 10 years. Nora swatted his arm playfully. "Be serious." Wade turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Nora Garrison, finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me. Every day since has been a gift I never thought I'd have. Even the hard days, the droughts and the blizzards and the children with croup, even those," he confirmed, "because we faced them together." Nora kissed him, feeling the same thrill she'd discovered that first night they'd truly become husband and wife. "I love you, Wade Garrison, and I love you," he replied, "more than I ever found words to say." As darkness settled over their land, they remained on the porch, talking softly about the past they'd shared and the future still stretching before them. Their story, which had begun in rain and tears, had blossomed into something neither could have imagined on that stormy Wyoming afternoon: a love as vast as the western sky and as enduring as the mountains that guarded their home. In the years that followed, their ranch became one of the most prosperous in the territory. Nora's school educated a generation of children, including their own, who grew strong and capable under their parents' guidance. Wade and Nora weathered the changing times together: the coming of the railroad, the transition from territory to state, the gradual taming of the frontier. And on stormy nights, when rain lashed against the windows of their home, they would sometimes smile at each other across the room, remembering a fateful day when a cowboy stood in the rain beside a crying woman and said, "Let me take you somewhere warm."